And it's something important tip if you are having trouble writing with your vac. Hello everyone. I want to do a quick video about using the TWSBI Iris. And I want to show two things specifically. One, I'm going to show you how to fill it. It is a vacuum filler, so it's a little different. And two, I want to show you a really important tip if you are having trouble writing with your vac. And it's something that I had trouble finding the answer to, and it made a world of difference in my experience with this pen. So as you can see, this pen is almost empty. And I also wanted to mention that I have seen people say that you have to keep a vac fairly full to use it successfully. And that is not my experience. I can use it until it's really out of ink and it still writes just fine. So I am going to go clean it out so I can fill it. But I just wanted to show you that, this does write even with this very small amount of ink left in it. Also notice the color. This is Yama-Budo. I am going to refill with Yama-Budo again, but it doesn't dry this color. It's also this color on my fingers. I was doing something else with it. And I love this color. I wish it was this color. It dries darker, but it is so beautiful in this pen that it is my choice. It has become my choice to keep in this pen. So I'm going to go clean it out, and then I'm going to come back and fill it up and show you a little trick and tip to make your vac pen or your TWSBI Iris experience so much better. Okay, I'll be back. So I'm back, and it's not a perfectly clean pen, but I'm filling it with the same ink, so it's okay. And again, I am going to use Yama-Budo. It's a Pilot Iroshizuku ink. And when I first started using this ink, I was hoping that it would be this perfect magenta for drawing and working in my illustrated journal. And it turned out to be much darker than I expected. Not quite what I was looking for. I think it has become hard to figure out exactly what it is I want. But I have come to love this ink, especially in this pen. So I am going to refill with it. This pen was a gift from my kids. And it is the first vacuum filler pen I have. I have a couple of other TWSBIs, which I really like. And I did not know when I first pointed this one out that it was a vac filler. So that was a surprise and took a little bit of getting used to. It still takes a little bit of fidgeting with. But it also has a very different nib. I'll show just for comparison. This is a TWSBI Eco. And you can see that the TWSBI Eco nib is much smaller. And I like that. I like this nib. I like the size. I can see around it, if that makes any sense. So it took me a little bit of time to get used to this larger, arguably probably a more standard size nib on the VAC 700R. But I have come to love this pen, but it took some doing. So that's the second part of the video after I fill. I want to show you that trick. Let's fill it up. Can be a little bit messy at times. Don't want to get it all over my sketchbook. And sometimes I don't get a great fill. I haven't filled it very many times, but I have had hit or miss success with getting a good fill. And I know that you can try it several times and get a better fill. I'm content if I get even a third, but halfway to a third, that's enough for me. I'm okay with filling it again as needed. So it is a vac. So unlike a piston where you would just twist it, you do twist the end to open it, but you pull it out. It's got this metal rod inside. And when you push this rod in, as it goes down, it's creating a vacuum, and you'll hear a snap. And once it snaps, then the ink just is sucked up into the pen. Mine is very stiff. I think I'm going to need to watch some videos to figure out how to put some silicone in here, how to fix this. But it makes it a little bit harder to actually fill it because it's very hard to press mine in. So put it down in here. You've got this all the way pulled out. put it down into your ink. And you slowly push, and it snaps. And I got about a third, maybe. For the purposes of this video, that's a fine fill. You could do it again. You could express the ink back out, or express it just part way and try and get the vacuum to pull more up into it. But that will be sufficient for what I want to show. So as you can see, it's so pretty, right, on the nib and in the body, but it's much darker, actually. I'm going to show some writing with it in a second, and it stains your fingers horribly, which is the color I would like. Okay, so as you can see, ink is in it now, and this could be tightened back up, but let's talk about that in a second. So I just filled it. It had been cleaned, so I haven't written with it since. Immediately writes. This is a TWSBI Iris. I think it's a VAC 700R, I think is what it's called. And this is a fine nib. And as you can see, it goes down. Sometimes it's hard maybe to pick up on camera. It goes down a very nice grape. Got it on my fingers and it's smudging my paper. A very nice grape shade, but it dries darker. So it does dry darker than I anticipated. And if you do any hatching, it obviously gets much darker. It loses some of that vibrancy, some of the magenta. I was after a magenta. And sometimes I feel like I see it, just a little bit. Definitely see it in the barrel. And if you write larger letters, probably if you were using this with a bold nib or a stub nib of some form, you might really see a different color, a much more intense color. Sometimes when I'm filling a space, not hatching, just filling in a space like a letter like this, I get a sense of that brighter grape, that violet magenta color that probably is closer to what I was after. But it tends to be that once it dries up, it seems a little darker. I've got other inks that stay brighter. So the other thing I want to mention is that, to show how it writes first on different paper. Again, this was office paper, just regular copier paper. And this is my Hobonichi, so this is Tomoe River. So Yama-Budo, you can see it has that really beautiful magenta tone. TWSBI. And it's so smooth. I keep a page in here where I do these kind of little tests just to show myself how it looks with several swipes of hatching. I keep that back here. So some of the inks I've tested I keep back here, but this just shows you, and it's very smooth on this paper. It's really lovely to write with. But when I first got this, I ended up super disappointed because it was a gift for my kids. It is a better pen than the other pens I have, but it didn't write well. And I filled it with Monteverde Aeronite, so I figured that was an okay choice. Not a good match. This is a much better ink in it, but I would write and it would seem fine. And then in the course of writing, it would stop. And it wasn't like a hard start. It simply would not write. And there was plenty of ink in it. You could see the ink in the barrel, but the pen would not write. I would try wiping it with a napkin. I tried rinsing it with water. And sometimes I thought, well, maybe that's sort of fixing it. But I could not make the pen write. And it happened several times in a row. And I thought my pen was defective. I thought I must have a faulty iris. I was super upset. I knew it was, in my family, it was a big gift. And I just was so disheartened that I had asked for and gotten a pen that I couldn't use, because even though it's beautiful and I love the rainbow sensibilities of this, mine has gorgeous coloration on it. I know it varies from pen to pen. I feel super lucky. Mine's got beautiful, almost coppery gold and purple magenta. Some of them I've seen are much bluer, and I love the color in the rim. Definitely some purple, blue, and even some beautiful turquoise green color in here. So I love it, and I wanted to just love this pen, and yet repeatedly it wouldn't write. So I thought, my pen is broken. I even ranted in my illustrated journal about how my pen really was such a disappointment. I did a lot of searching, and I finally found an answer. I searched in just the right way, finally, to find the answer. And so I want to share it with you, because if you've got an iris and you think, wow, my iris is just not so great, my iris won't write, my iris is super frustrating, and you think you just got a bad pen, that you got a lemon, it might be that you need to do this. And the trick is, when you get your pen, you fill it and you tighten this back up. Makes a lot of sense, right? You think you want to go ahead, not over tighten it, but just until it's flush, you want to go ahead and tighten the end. But if you do, for some reason, this pen will not work, won't work consistently. It's not that it hard starts, it stops after a little bit, and it has something to do with when it's fully closed, only a certain amount of ink is accessible up here in the top portion. And when you run through that, basically, even though there's more ink, it's can't get through. It's a very odd thing to me that you have to open this, but that is the trick. If you just unscrew this, and you can experiment with how much play you want to leave, how loose you want it to be. But if you just unscrew this, you will find that that problem goes away. Now, it may seem like it's not a great option if you have to carry this around. This works really well if you're at home and you can leave your pen in one place until you use it. I do carry mine. I throw it in my pocket or in my bag when I go out, and I do leave this open. Probably if you're really going to be out and about and you're kind of hard with your stuff, active, very active, you might want to close it up as you travel, and then you can just loosen it up again when you get ready to start using it. So again, you can play with how loose you want it, and there's quite a bit of give here, so you really will just have to play with it. I keep mine fairly open, but sometimes I just idly mess with it too. But you will find that that makes a big difference. So again, it's a beautiful pen. It's a beautiful ink. It's a perfect ink in this barrel. It has become my favorite pen. And although I love to switch inks and use a bunch of inks, and I'm using dip pen with a ton of inks, I feel like this is a pen for me that is going to stick with some form of magenta. And right now, it's definitely the Yama-Budo. So I know it has a huge fan base, and I kind of feel like I can understand why. Like right now, look at that going down. That's just gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous magenta color. And sometimes it does look lighter, and sometimes it's much darker. When you use a fine or extra fine nib, you typically are used to that. Sometimes you see less of the saturation and intensity of the color, but it is really pretty, and it's pretty in this pen. Such a great fit on this nib, which has a little bit of iridescence anyway. So I just wanted to show you that because I finally saw this tip on a video from Brian Goulet from Goulet Pens, and I was really glad to finally figure out what was going on and find some kind of solution. But it was hard enough for me to find it that I thought it was worth showing you again, just in case you run into the same problem. I can also highly recommend this gorgeous pen. So that's it. I hope that you have a great time with your vac, and happy writing.